If you're a senior woman thinking about dating again, I need to tell you something that most people won't say directly. The men you'll meet are not looking at you the way you think they are. They may look different than they did decades ago, but psychologically, they're the same animal, just with more experience and more tricks. The difference is you might not see it coming, because inside, you still feel like that younger version of yourself. You feel vibrant. You feel alive. You feel beautiful. And that's actually the problem. Because while you're looking in the mirror and seeing that young person, the men you meet are seeing something completely different. They're seeing resources. They're seeing vulnerability. They're seeing opportunity.
Amen. This is Liza from Secrets Inside the Mind, and today I'm breaking down the psychology of dating as a senior woman, what men are actually looking for, how to protect yourself, and how to date with intention instead of desperation. Because at this stage of your life, you deserve clarity, not confusion. Engagement CTA number 1, around 1 minute. If you've ever felt used or manipulated in a relationship, or if you're thinking about dating but you're not sure how to protect yourself, subscribe right now, because this video reveals the psychology beneath what men say versus what they actually mean. Keep watching until the end, because the final insight is about spiritual protection, something most women never consider. Section 1, the psychology of aging and attraction, what men actually see when they look at you. Here's the psychological reality that most people don't want to admit. As a woman ages, the way men approach dating changes fundamentally, not because you changed, but because the psychological dynamic shifted completely. When you were younger, men approached you with one psychological motivation. They saw potential for family, for children, for building something together. That was the psychological framework. But as you enter your senior years, the psychological calculation shifts. From a psychological perspective, here's what's happening in his mind. When he approaches a senior woman, he's looking at you and he's seeing security, he's seeing stability, he's seeing someone who might have accumulated resources over time, he's seeing someone who might take care of him, he's seeing someone who, at this stage of life, might be lonely and grateful for any male attention. And this is where the psychology of aging becomes dangerous, because you still feel young inside. Psychologically, your internal sense of self hasn't aged as much as your external appearance has. This is a documented psychological phenomenon. Internally, you might feel like you're still in your 40s or 50s, even if you're in your 70s or 80s. But men are not looking at your internal experience. They're making calculations based on what they see. And what they see is an older woman, a woman at a vulnerable life stage, a woman who might be lonely, a woman who might be willing to compromise her standards just to have someone. This is the fundamental psychological mismatch that leads to manipulation. You're operating from one psychological reality. You still feel young, you still have needs, you still want connection. And he's operating from a completely different psychological reality. You're a resource, you're available, you're an opportunity. From a psychological standpoint, this is predatory. And most men don't even see it that way because they've been socialized their entire lives to view women through a transactional lens. What can she provide? What can she give me? The psychological truth is this. At this stage of life, if a man is still single and approaching women, you need to ask yourself why. If he's been navigating 60, 70, 80 years and he hasn't found a committed partnership, that's information. That tells you something about his capacity for genuine connection. Psychologically, men who are still hunting at this age are often men who have never developed the emotional maturity for real partnership. They're still operating from the same psychological framework they had at 30. They still want the same thing, and the thing they want is not you. Section 2, the psychology of manipulation, romance as a strategic tool. One of the most dangerous psychological tactics used against senior women is what I call strategic romance. And you need to understand how it works because understanding the psychology is the only way to protect yourself. Here's the psychological mechanism. A man approaches a senior woman. He gives her attention. He gives her compliments. He makes her feel seen. He makes her feel desired. And psychologically, this is extremely powerful because at this stage of life, many senior women haven't experienced male attention in a long time. So when a man suddenly appears and acts like he's interested, acts like he thinks she's beautiful, acts like he wants to spend time with her, psychologically, it's intoxicating. It feels like validation. It feels like she still has value. It feels like she's still desirable. But here's the psychological truth. This is not romance. This is performance. This is a man using psychological tactics that he's learned over decades. He knows exactly what to say. He knows exactly what compliments to give. He knows exactly how to make a woman feel special. And the psychology underneath this is calculated. He's not doing this because he thinks she's wonderful. He's doing this because he's identified her as a target. Psychologically, he's assessing, does she have resources? Is she lonely? Is she vulnerable? Is she likely to believe what I'm telling her? From a psychological perspective, this is manipulation. It's using someone's loneliness and desire for connection as a tool to gain access to their resources, their home, their money, or their body. The tragedy is that many senior women don't recognize this because they want it to be true. Psychologically, we all want to believe that someone cares about us. We all want to believe that we're still attractive and desirable. We all want to believe that it's possible to find love at any age. But wanting something to be true is not the same as it being true. And the psychology of hope can actually make you more vulnerable to manipulation, not less. Here's what men are psychologically counting on. They're counting on you being so grateful for their attention that you stop questioning their motives. They're counting on you being so excited to have a romantic connection that you overlook red flags. They're counting on you being so afraid of being alone that you accept behavior you would have rejected at 30. Section 3, the vulnerability of loneliness, your psychological weak point. One of the most important things you need to understand from a psychological perspective is your own vulnerability. And I'm not saying this to shame you, I'm saying it so you can protect yourself. Loneliness is one of the most powerful psychological forces in human experience. It's stronger than logic. It's stronger than reason. It can override your better judgment. And as a senior woman, if you've experienced loss, death of a spouse, divorce, years of being single, loneliness might be one of your deepest psychological needs. From a psychological standpoint, loneliness creates what's called a scarcity mindset. When you feel like romantic connection is scarce, when you feel like your opportunities are limited, your brain actually makes worse decisions. It prioritizes immediate connection over long-term safety. It settles for less because it's afraid there won't be anything better. This is basic psychology. When we feel scarcity, we make poor choices. And men know this. Psychologically, they know that a lonely woman is more likely to overlook red flags. A lonely woman is more likely to move quickly into commitment. A lonely woman is more likely to ignore her intuition. So the psychological dynamic becomes this. He creates an environment where she feels less lonely. He gives her attention. He makes her feel wanted. And in that psychological relief from loneliness, she becomes vulnerable to being used. The psychology of protection is crucial here. You need to protect yourself not from your emotions. Your emotions are valid, but from acting on them too quickly. You need to slow down the psychological process of bonding so you can evaluate whether this person is actually trustworthy. From a psychological perspective, one of the most important things you can do is build a strong internal sense of self-worth that doesn't depend on male validation. This is not something you do once. This is something you do continuously. You remind yourself of your value. You remind yourself that you're complete as you are. You remind yourself that you don't need a man to be whole. Because when you believe that, psychologically, you stop being vulnerable to manipulation. When you're not desperate for connection, you can see clearly. When you're not afraid of being alone, you can make better choices. Engagement. CTA number 2, around 6 minutes. If you're recognizing your own patterns of loneliness in what I'm describing, this is your moment of awareness. Comment below about what you're realizing, like this video if it's helping you see yourself more clearly, and Keep watching because the next section explains exactly what to look for when you do decide to date. Let's see section 4, safety psychology, practical protection strategies that actually work. Let me be very clear about something from a psychological safety perspective. You should never go out on your own to meet men. I don't care how safe you think your neighborhood is. I don't care how confident you feel. From a psychological and practical standpoint, going out alone is a risk you don't need to take. The psychology behind this is simple. There's safety in numbers. When you have a girlfriend with you, you have a witness. You have someone who can see clearly what's happening. You have someone who can pull you back if you're getting swept up in the moment. You have someone who will go home with you at the end of the night instead of letting you make a decision you might regret. From a psychological perspective, a woman alone is vulnerable. A woman with her girlfriend is protected, and the men know this. If a man is interested in you for the right reasons, he won't mind that you brought a friend. He'll understand it, he'll respect it. But if a man seems bothered by your girlfriend being there, if he tries to pull you aside, if he tries to create situations where you're alone, psychologically, that's a red flag. That tells you he's interested in controlling the dynamic. Here's the practical psychology of dating as a senior woman. First, never do online dating. From a psychological standpoint, online dating removes the ability to read energy, to trust your intuition, to sense red flags. It puts you in a situation where you're meeting strangers with no context, no community vetting, no mutual connections. In-person meeting is psychologically safer because you can read the person. You can sense their energy. You can trust your intuition about whether something feels off. Second, if you meet someone at church or in your community, take time before trusting them. Watch them for years, not months. Psychologically, people can pretend for a while, but they can't pretend forever. Over time, their true character emerges, so take the time to see how they treat other people. Take the time to hear what others say about them. Third, and this is psychologically crucial, don't have sex quickly. In fact, I would suggest not having sex for at least a year of getting to know someone. This is not about being prudish. This is about neuroscience and psychology. Here's what happens psychologically when you have sex. Your brain releases oxytocin. Oxytocin is called the bonding hormone. It creates a psychological attachment. It makes you chemically bonded to that person. It makes you less objective. It makes you more forgiving of red flags. So if you haven't had sex with someone, you can leave the relationship clearly. You can see that it's not working and walk away. But if you've had sex, your brain is chemically bonded. You're psychologically attached in a way that makes it much harder to leave, even if you should. This is why waiting is so important from a psychological standpoint. Give yourself time to know the person. Give yourself time to watch them. Give yourself time to see if they're actually who they claim to be. Section 5, Red Flags in Psychology, What to Actually Look For. Let me give you specific psychological red flags to watch for, because understanding what to look for is how you protect yourself. Red flag number 1. He's pushing for commitment quickly. Psychologically, this is a manipulation tactic. A man who genuinely cares about you will respect that you need time. A man who's trying to lock you in before you see his true character will push for fast commitment. Red flag number 2. He wants sex quickly. Psychologically, he's trying to create that chemical bond before you've had time to evaluate him. He knows that once you've had sex, you're psychologically less objective. Red flag number 3. He's evasive about his life, his finances, his past. Psychologically, he's hiding something. He doesn't want you to know too much because if you did, you'd see the red flags. Red flag number 4. He criticizes you or compares you to other women. Psychologically, he's trying to lower your self-esteem. He's trying to make you feel like you should be grateful for his attention. Red flag number 5. He isolates you from your friends and family. Psychologically, this is one of the most dangerous red flags because it removes your support system. Once you're isolated, you become completely dependent on him psychologically. Red flag number 6. He wants you to pay for dates while he doesn't. Psychologically, this tells you he doesn't respect you. It tells you he sees you as a resource to be used. Red flag number 7. He lies about small things. Psychologically, if someone lies about small things, they'll lie about big things. Lying is their default. You can't trust someone who lies. Red flag number 8. He moves very slowly in some areas, but very fast in others. For example, he won't commit verbally, but pushes for physical intimacy. Psychologically, this is inconsistency. It tells you his actions don't match his words. These are psychological red flags that should tell you to stop investing time and leave. Because, from a psychological perspective, if you see these patterns early, they will only get worse. Engagement CTA number 3, around 10 minutes. If you're recognizing these red flags in your own life, don't ignore them. Comment below about which red flag resonates most with you, like this video if it's helping you see patterns, and keep watching, because the next section is about building the internal foundation that prevents you from attracting these men in the first place. Section 6. The psychology of self-worth, building unshakable internal value. Here's something that most dating advice doesn't address from a psychological perspective. Your own self-worth is the foundation for everything. If you don't have strong internal self-worth, you will attract people who exploit that. If you do have strong internal self-worth, you will naturally avoid people who try to exploit you. Psychologically, this is called assortative mating, but it works for every type of relationship. Like attracts like. If you're vibrating at a frequency of self-love, you attract people who respect you. If you're vibrating at a frequency of desperation, you attract people who can use you. So the real work, the psychological work, is internal. It's about building your own sense of worth. It's about knowing that you're complete as you are. It's about understanding that you don't need a man to validate you or complete you or make your life meaningful. This is radical for many women because we've been socialized to believe that our value comes from our relationships, that our worth is tied to whether we're chosen, that our success is measured by whether we have a man. The truth is, your worth exists independent of any relationship. You are worthy right now. You are complete right now. You are valuable right now. A relationship should add to your life. It should not be your life. Psychologically, when you believe this, everything changes. You stop settling. You stop accepting poor treatment. You stop trying so hard. You stop performing. You become magnetic because you're not desperate. From a psychological standpoint, I would suggest spending time loving yourself. I would suggest learning what brings you joy independent of anyone else. I would suggest building a life that's fulfilling on its own, because when you do that, when you have a complete life, you're not vulnerable to someone using you. You have standards, and men sense that. Psychologically, they know the difference between a woman who needs them and a woman who chooses them, and they respect the woman who chooses them far more than the woman who needs them. Section 7, the spiritual dimension, energy protection and spiritual bonds. I want to talk about something that most dating advice completely ignores, the spiritual dimension of intimate connection. From a psychological and spiritual perspective, when you share your body with someone, you're doing more than just a physical act. You're creating an energetic bond. You're creating a spiritual connection. Whether you believe in spirituality or not, I would encourage you to understand that when you share your body with someone, you're sharing your energy. You're sharing your essence. You're creating a connection that goes beyond the physical. And here's the spiritual and psychological truth. If that person doesn't deserve that connection, if that person is using you, if that person is manipulating you, you're giving them access to your spiritual energy. You're giving them the ability to affect you long after the relationship ends. This is why it's so important to wait. This is why it's so important to be sure. Because once you've created that spiritual and psychological bond, breaking it takes work. It takes time. It takes spiritual practices to clear that connection. From both a psychological and spiritual perspective, be very careful about who you allow into your body and your energy, because that person becomes part of you in ways that are hard to explain, but deeply real. This is also why you can't just dismiss what happened with someone after the relationship ends. Spiritually and psychologically, the bond remains until you consciously clear it. So choose carefully. Be intentional. Protect yourself spiritually. Protect. In Section 8, the psychology of choice. Dating with intention, not desperation. Here's something that will shift your entire perspective on dating as a senior woman. You should never be looking for a man. This goes against everything society tells you, but psychologically, it's the truth. When you go out looking for a man, you're coming from a place of scarcity. You're coming from a place of need, and psychologically, that need is visible. Men can sense it, and men who want to use women are attracted to that need like sharks to blood. But when you go out with the intention of having fun, of enjoying your girlfriends, of living your life, something shifts psychologically. You're coming from a place of abundance. You're coming from a place of wholeness. And that energy is completely different. So the psychological reframe is this. Don't go out looking for a date. Go out to enjoy yourself. Go out to dance, to laugh, to be with your friends. And if a man approaches you, fine, approaches, but you're not there because you need him. You're there because you're living your life. From a psychological perspective, this is the most attractive energy you can have. And it's also the safest. Because when you're not desperate, you have standards. When you're not looking, you can be selective. When you're whole on your own, you won't settle for someone who uses you. Here's the psychological truth about what men want. Men are attracted to women who don't need them. Men respect women who have their own lives. Men pursue women who have standards. This is the psychology of attraction. It's not about being young or beautiful. It's about being confident and self-contained. So, as a senior woman, if you want a date, first build a life that's full without a man. Fill it with friends, with hobbies, with travel, with purpose. And then, from that place of fullness, if a man shows up and he adds value, fine. But he's not the center. He's not the point. He's an addition to an already good life. Psychologically, this is the most powerful position you can be in. Engagement, CTA number 4, around 15 minutes. This is the shift that changes everything. If you're committing to this psychological reframe, to building a full life independent of a man, comment below. Tell me what you're going to do differently. Like this video if it's resonating. And if you haven't subscribed yet, this is the moment because the final section brings everything together. Section 9, Final Wisdom, the Psychology of Acceptance and Peace. As I wrap up, I want to tell you the final psychological truth about dating as a senior woman. You might decide that dating is not worth it. You might decide that being alone is better than being with someone who uses you. And that's not a failure. That's wisdom. Psychologically, there's a point where you realize that your peace is more valuable than your loneliness. There's a point where you understand that your solitude is richer than a relationship that drains you. There's a point where you choose yourself over compromise. And that's the ultimate power. Not finding someone, but choosing yourself. So as you move forward, whether you decide to date or whether you decide to build a beautiful life on your own, do it from a place of intention. Do it from a place of self-respect. Do it from a place of knowing your own value. And remember, the right man, if he exists in your life, won't require you to become less of yourself. He won't require you to ignore red flags. He won't require you to compromise your peace. He'll honor your time. He'll respect your boundaries. He'll value your worth. But if he doesn't do these things, if you have to fight for basic respect, if you have to convince him of your value, he's not the right man, and you're better off alone. That's the psychological wisdom I want you to carry forward. That's the clarity I want you to have.
Because at this stage of your life, you deserve to be chosen, not convinced. You deserve to be valued, not pursued. You deserve a man who shows up, not one you have to chase. And if that man doesn't exist, you deserve the peace of knowing you chose yourself. If this video has given you clarity, if it's shifted how you see dating and relationships at this stage of your life, comment below. Tell me your biggest realization. Like this video if it's helped you see things differently. Share it with other senior women who deserve to understand this psychology. And subscribe to Secrets Inside the Mind because understanding the psychology of relationships, the psychology of manipulation, the psychology of self-worth, these are things every woman needs to know at any age. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.